All right, we should be live. Um, well, welcome everyone that's already here. As you guys can see, we have JP, Trav, and Parker here joining us. We appreciate everyone being here. I know it's a little late, but we're gonna get the party started. Even though it's a Monday, obviously the biggest thing that we're gonna probably talk about today is recruiting. But make sure that you're interacting with us. Put your questions in the chat. We'll try to get to them as fast as we can, but we're going to discuss a lot of things today. So bear with us. We might not answer everything, but we'll try to get to as much as we can. So let's go get ahead and get started. Colton Basic committed today. I mispronounce that guy's name all the time, so sorry about that, Colton. What do you guys think? How do we feel about the start of August?
I feel fantastic. I don't know if we're looping this in with July though. When we talk about our legendary July, I think that it's only right that when the actual commitment happened, and I know that might screw up some silence that we didn't know about, all that kind of stuff, but we get to pick and choose because it's us bragging about something. So we can you can change the rules when you want, but with so many recruits in July, 9 announcements, and then the party in the palace was so successful. That was one of the most fun nights on Twitter I've had in a while. And I was actually out with my family. They were in town, and my phone died when we were out of the bar having drinks afterwards. And I was like, I have never been so upset when my phone died because everybody was just lighting things up. I'm texting back and forth with JP, with Parker, with all this stuff, and then boom, phone crashes, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I started walking around the bar talking to people. Like, I was like, hey, OU fans here? We got to talk about this. Like, it was just, I haven't had a feeling like that since Tiger won the Masters, and I was coming back from a vacation. We were in the airport listening to it. And anybody in a golf shirt that I saw in the airport, I was like, dude, Tiger's about to win the Masters. Come over here and listen to it. And we had a crowd going through the Costa Rican airport. It looked like it was some type of paparazzi situation, but it was just our big mobile speaker that was playing the Tiger with. That's what it felt like. But yeah, great pickup for the Sooners. He's a monster, man, just a monster.
Yeah, Colton Vasek is a very, very underrated player and a very fast rising player. You look at where he's at right now in the 24/7 Sports Composite. He went from completely unranked not long ago to on the verge of cracking the top 150. So he's had a rise that is similar to that of PJ Adebawore, although not quite as impressive. I mean, we're talking about a top 50 player in the country right now in PJ. So Colton's not there as of right now, but you flip on the tape, man, the dude is a monster off the edge. He's got a motor that's ridiculous. The way that he can close, especially once he gets clear of his blocker and has a clear lane to the quarterback, man, that's a special talent. And it's arguably the most impressive recruiting win for Brent Venables and this staff to date. I would say even if David Hicks ends up announcing a commitment to Oklahoma here in the next few months, I would argue this poll is still more impressive for the OU staff, because when you think about the fact that Colton Vasek comes from a Texas family, mom and dad were both UT graduates, grew up a Texas fan, plays his high school football in UT's backyard at Austin Westlake. That's not a kid that should be committing to the University of Oklahoma in any universe, right? It's impressive enough and it's noteworthy enough if he goes elsewhere, whether that's Oregon, Clemson, Texas Tech, right? If he goes one of those places, yeah, it's noteworthy. But the fact that he's going to Oklahoma, of all places, just makes it all the more impressive. And what a job by Miguel Chavis in particular, because 5 days ago, I didn't figure OU still had a shot with this kid. I figure a lot of people were in that exact same boat. And this thing turned on a dime. And Friday night, when probably 24 hours before I finally actually got legitimate confirmation that the kid's showing up to Oklahoma and not Texas Tech. 24 hours later, boom. He and Miguel Chavis are still out on the turf at Owen Field talking deep into the night. And out of that comes the 19th commitment of the class for Oklahoma. So really, really cool last few days and really, really cool story, particularly pulling a kid from out of enemy territory in Austin.
The D-line group in particular for this class is like the most fun to look at now. You've got Colton Vasek, Derek LeBlanc, PJ Adebare, and there's some guys out there that we're still very much in the running for. So let's play hypothetically here for a second. Say we land David Hicks, say we land Jordan Renaud, say we land Cecilia Kana. That has to be the deepest defensive line group in the country, right? or am I just being biased here?
I had Marcus Deal to it.
Oh boy, Travis, you're already throwing that out there, huh?
Hey man, I came to party, man. I don't know about y'all.
Hey, I'll say this: OU's trending in the right direction for Deal. However, if they're, my thing with Deal is, if you do get to a point, and I believe OU will get to this point, if you do get to the point where your spots start to fill up, Deal is probably the first guy that they would turn away, which is crazy to think, right? Because you're talking about a national top 150 player, and we're sitting here theorizing about Oklahoma not having room for that type of player, right? Last year, you think about the defensive line haul that Venables and company made down the stretch. They had to cobble it together with a bunch of 3-star kids down the stretch just to get warm bodies in the room at Oklahoma. And that's no knock on Alton Tarber or Grayson Halton or R. Mason Thomas, who I believe in particular is going to be a dude at the next level. But when you look at the caliber of players that Oklahoma is bringing in this recruiting class as compared to years past, and particularly on the defensive line, the Sooners staff is ahead of schedule right now. And that's what's most impressive. We knew that Brent Venables and Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis were eventually going to start landing these types of players. They're already doing it after 8 months on the job. And so, if you can round out this class with David Hicks, Cecilia Kana, Jordan Renaud, and maybe throw in somebody like a Marcus Deal on the tail end, that's the best defensive line haul in the history of this program, at least in the modern recruiting era. Obviously, people still talk about those fabled classes of the 70s, and I am in no place to compare those two against each other. But when you look at the modern recruiting era, I believe this is going to be Oklahoma's highest rated class of the modern recruiting era. And when you look at that defensive line haul in particular, it blows every other class out of the water that Oklahoma has ever signed.
Definitely. And I have to ask, so Marcus Steele for the longest time, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was being recruited along the offensive line.
That's right.
And at what point did that switch in their opinion? Because, I mean, he's a talented defensive player, and I feel like I'm surprised that it took it this long, and maybe they just realized, is Caden McDonald trending elsewhere? I think I saw a crystal ball come in for Clemson. I know, it seems like it's between McDonald and Deal, maybe for that nose tackle spot. Is that kind of what's happening right now?
I've just struggled to buy it for several months now between OU and Caden McDonald. And on paper, it makes sense. He's got a lot of connections to Oklahoma, a long-standing friendship with Jackson Arnold. But at some point, you got to show up, right? You got to get on campus. You got to demonstrate that you're interested in the program. And Caden McDonald.
Not if you're Peyton Kirkland. Go to campus. You don't even make it top 5.
Touche. When I look at the situation with Caden McDonald and all the programs that are in the mix for him down the stretch, I think Florida stands a good chance of landing him. I think Clemson certainly stands a good chance of landing him. I got to see him visit Oklahoma again before I get too confident in OU's chances. To answer your question about Marcus Deal, it's very, very recently that the OU staff reinserted themselves into that recruitment and began recruiting Deal as a defensive lineman. And the thing about guys like Hicks and Renaud and Vasek, Akana, you take a look at all the guys Oklahoma has committed and or is in good shape to land. You have a lot of very talented defensive players along the front there. But what you don't have is a zero tech, right? You don't have a true nose tackle. That's what Marcus Steele is. He's the big, wide body that the Sooners don't yet have in this class or aren't yet trending for in this class. So there is something to be said for being able to lock in a guy like him to kind of round out this class. It almost feels like a luxury more than anything else, but it's a luxury you'd love to have. The Sooners got a guy that's cut from that same cloth towards the end of the cycle last year in Alton Tarber. Cedric Roberts very much fits that bill as well. Maybe Deal is the next man up in that regard for Oklahoma and the staff. But as of right now, I think with the three guys that you have committed up front in Vasic, Adabare, and Derek LeBlanc, if you are able to close with Renaud, Akana, and DJ Hicks, I don't think any Sooner fan, even the nitpickiest of nitpickers, is going to be sitting there in February asking, why the heck didn't they go get a zero tech? You know?
Yeah, for sure. So, Indy Sooner, I got to ask JP, what do you think about this weekend? I haven't heard anything out of you. This weekend's been insane. I mean, we were talking about before we came on, this has to be like the craziest month of Sooner recruiting I've ever seen. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. As Trav said, he and I were texting back and forth, and he was telling me, he's at the game with his folks and his sister and everything, and they were like, Trav, get off your phone, because or whatever. And I told him, I was like, hey, my wife was telling me the same thing. Like, we're in bed with our 4-month-old daughter, and she was cool, like she was sleeping, but I was like, babe, like we've had this conversation. This is one of those moments, like, this is crazy. Like we got to talk. So it was definitely one of the craziest nights I've ever been a part of. Just kind of in shock and in awe. Obviously, again, as we had said, just from everything Parker's been saying and everything Trav and I have been talking about, we said July was going to be big. And Parker was proven right. But I don't know if, I can't speak for Parker. I don't speak for him. But I don't know if Trav and I even expected maybe what happened.
No, it exceeded my expectations.
What'd you say, Parker?
It exceeded my expectations too.
Yeah,
I think I'm on the record somewhere to saying we'll get 10 in July. So I'm counting at least one of the locks, just because it's weird math, and I'm just gonna put it in my favor to be like, hey, I know when people recruit, when people committed. It's just the announcements, and that's why I was talking with basically anybody who would listen about like announcements, like when you commit, like announce, get the video, get the edit, all that, because that's the thing. It's like if we were to have all of our silence, and I get other schools have them. That's the thing. We can always do these, class calculator things and everything like that. My most used feature of the last month, that's for sure, on 247, the old class calculator. But we can do all that, but all these other, guys other schools are gonna keep landing kids. I mean, we're not the only ones that are landing people. But if those other 4 locks just decided like, hey, look, we're gonna announce, we would rocket to the number 1 class, and it would just be so much fun to tweet at Texas fans.
That was my biggest thing.
It's already fun right now, but
yeah, like in June, and when we did a show like right towards the end of June, when I was on a vacation, and my biggest thing wasn't that Oklahoma wasn't going to recruit well. It just the commits needed to start announcing, because once it's like Cale Gundy tweets every time we get a new commit. Once one goes, it's just a domino effect, and you start getting more momentum. So it wasn't me not believing in this stuff. It was, we just need to get 1 or 2 kids to say we want to be Sooners. That way, not just like the fan base kind of takes a chill pill, because at that point there was a lot of people getting a little crazy about Ken Venables and this staff recruit, but like nationally, we saw that Longhorn Wire article with a ridiculous headline thing saying that like the recruiting's in trouble, but it wasn't. No one knew what was happening behind the scenes, right?
And I don't know if you saw if you guys saw that tweet from the Longhorn Big 12 account back on July 4th. Me and him were going back and forth, and so I said, okay, let's just see what happens by the end of July, okay? And he tried to sun me and say, oh, okay, buddy, we'll see. And it was just like sweet nectar being able to pull that receipt out, and even better to pull it out again, because I pulled that out last week, right? Like after we got LeBlanc to commit on Thursday, and then to see what happened Friday night made it even
days later.
that much better, right? So yeah, that's kind of again where I was.
With it's funny because we talk about how great it is to be able to dunk on our doubters, right? Texas fans, all this, just after a big rise in the recruiting rankings. That's why I can't even imagine after we win a national title. I can't imagine. The most recent argument goes away. We already have more. The can't win the big game, no defense, all of it goes away. I know a lot of people on Sooner Scoop already think I'm the most annoying person ever. I will be the most annoying person ever.
Oh, this podcast is going to be horrible.
When that happens, I will. Oh man, it's going to be insane.
It's coming. It's going to be within the next 5 years. I want to almost just guarantee that it's going to happen within the next 5 years. If you get defensive line hauls and this type of recruiting class for a couple years, this is a national championship winning caliber recruiting class. I mean, you get a couple of these coming through, no problem at all. I think, and something that we kind of talked about is the momentum of July. And I think Colton Vasek, while he did like Oklahoma, I think a lot of the momentum he kind of started to drift away. He saw all these top level commits come in, and he's like, wait a minute, what am I missing that everyone else is seeing? And then he realized, he went back. I mean, the fact that he went to Texas a couple of days before, put up the picture with Arch Manning with the horns up, a couple of days later goes to Oklahoma, and then Oklahoma closes him out. That would never happen with the previous staff. And this staff is recruiting at a different level, and it's pretty incredible to see.
The previous staff seems to be losing more recruits or having recruits flirt around with other schools than they are bringing kids in at the moment. But that's it is what it is. I like it.
We've had a lot of people ask about it seems like the marquee name right now in Oklahoma recruiting, not just David Hicks, but Peyton Bowen, and the possibility of him flipping. Seems like this is going to be a long potential recruitment of him flipping. Do you guys know anything about, like, is that even a realistic possibility right now? Because when we had Drum on, probably like a week and a half ago now, he said his expectation was June, could have come with a decision, but obviously it's gone a little longer than that.
Well, I don't even know if I should put any more message board fodder out there, because Notre Dame fans already hate my guts for saying that
they do not like you at all.
Oh man, it's been rough. Like, I promise I'm not a bad person, y'all. But no, as far as the Bowen situation goes, I think the writing's been on the wall for some time. And look, I'll stick to my guns on that. And I've talked to people down in DFW who have a very, very good beat on that situation and the situation with the Bowen family. I expect him to flip. Now, does that necessarily mean he flips to Oklahoma? No. Texas A&M is in the mix as well. But I just think with everything that he and Notre Dame have been through and how strained that relationship has become, with him continuing to visit Oklahoma over and over and continuing to visit Texas A&M over and over, I think what you are clearly beginning to see is that Peyton himself is not sold on Notre Dame being the spot. Right? If he was, you don't show up to Oklahoma that many times. You don't show up to Texas A&M that many times if you know Notre Dame is the place for you. And so I don't know if he's just looking for a reason, if he's waiting for Notre Dame to give him a reason to make it official. I know that family is very tight-knit, especially him, his brother, his mom. That's not going to be a decision that Peyton makes in isolation. But here's what I do know. And again, I want to emphasize, him decommitting from Notre Dame does not mean with absolute certainty he ends up at Oklahoma. But if you're looking at some of the ancillary factors here, his quarterback, Jackson Arnold, is the crown jewel of Oklahoma's recruiting class in 2023. His teammate, Ryan Yates, the fellow four-star defensive back at Denton Guyer, Oklahoma's making a very strong push to flip him, one that I believe in the end is probably going to be successful. Eli, the younger brother, very high on Oklahoma as well. So what happens if Jackson's already there, Ryan Yates ends up there, Eli wants to be there? Even if Peyton isn't 100% sold on Oklahoma, do you count on him going 1,000 miles to South Bend to a place he's not 100% sold on? Or do you count on him basically joining up with his three teammates, one of which is his brother, 2 hours north of home at the University of Oklahoma? I think it's a far safer bet right now that he ends up at OU than it is that he ends up at Notre Dame. That's the way I see it. And I know Notre Dame fans they've said a lot, but one of the things they've said is that, well, he doesn't have any sources. He's just talking. And look, for the most part, yes, I am giving my opinion, but it's an informed opinion. It's an opinion that has come out of conversations with people who have intimate knowledge of that recruitment, that family, that process. And so I'm not just throwing darts at a board here. I have reason to think the things that I think regarding Peyton Bowen's recruitment. And again, does he end up at OU? I don't know. Does he end up at Texas A&M? I don't know. I think I do know that he doesn't end up at Notre Dame at this rate. And if I'm Marcus Freeman and that Notre Dame staff, how much longer do I play this game with not only Peyton Bowen, but Keon Keeley as well, before I simply say, okay, it's pretty clear that we both need to go our separate ways. So,
yeah. And I think when you bring up kind of throwing darts against the wall and, or throwing darts at the board and you having it sourced, it's not, you don't even have to do that, right? It's just, let's look at the extremely public information. Girlfriend's at OU. Younger brother's been offered by OU. A&M can't say that. Jackson Arnold, teammate, going to OU. Everybody know Ryan Yates is a flip candidate, we'll call him, at minimum. You know that's public. What's also public is he keeps visiting other places. So you don't even have to source this. It's not even inside information. If you just look at all of those things, that he keeps on taking visits, okay, then he's probably not all the way locked in if he can't keep himself off of other campuses. And then add in all the other factors, and you can come to at least an educated guess just based on everything that's public. Now you can what you can source is, okay, what exactly is the holdup? What factors are going against, things like that, that aren't as public. But I don't know. I am a certified sunshine pumper. So I do believe that he ends up in Norman with his teammates, with his brother, with his girlfriend, with the best defensive coach that is going to be available to him in the after he does flip. So, yeah, that's just my thoughts on it.
I mean, you can't visit somewhere while you're committed 6, 7, 8 times unofficially. That's right down the road. One of your best friends, Jackson Arnold. We had Jackson Arnold on for an interview. If you haven't seen that, definitely go check it out for everyone that's watching. He said that if Peyton does end up, flipping to Oklahoma, that's going to be his roommate. That's how close they are. So, I mean, I feel like being 2.5, 3 hours away from home, your best friend's going there, your girlfriend's going there. It just almost, it seems like it could end up really well for Oklahoma. Maybe not 100%, but A&M's right there. And I think on my video, our video earlier today, I said I kind of think A&M might ultimately win, but I could see Oklahoma winning this one too.
Yeah, and I will say this. If Peyton Bowen doesn't end up at Oklahoma, that would mark the first loss in the history of girlfriends. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Is there a point that OU kind of quits recruiting him if he continues to visit A&M and we don't?
Well, and I think it has less to do with him visiting A&M and more to do with the fact that Oklahoma has other options on the table at safety. And so if this thing drags out to the point where it's just too much emotional turmoil for Venables and Brandon Hall and everybody involved with this recruiting process on the other end, yeah, I can see OU deciding, you know what, we're going to go a different direction. Now, does that mean Jeremiah Anglin? Does that mean Conrad Hussey? I'm not entirely sure. But here's what I do know. This Oklahoma class is going to be good enough that with or without Peyton Bowen, they're going to finish in the top 5. So as good of a player as Peyton Bowen is, and he is a great football player, he's also gravy for this class based on the way that this OU staff is recruiting right now. So it's not as if their class rides or dies or anything close to it with Peyton Bowen. They can afford to walk away if that's what it comes to.
I also don't think that if Yates ends up flipping to OU, and obviously Jackson Arnold has been an incredible peer recruiter, I don't think they allow a stop to the recruitment. I think if the staff is like, hey, look, we're gonna move on, I think Arnold and Yates are both like, look, we're in season together. Let us lean on him a little bit, all that kind of stuff. So I personally think he's going to be one they leave the light on for, just because I think the teammates of his will press them.
And maybe a good season, defense with Venables and his staff, and they play really well. That might be like, okay, well, you know what? At this point, I have nothing to even second guess about. Maybe if they're, putting a good product on the field, playing good defensively, I don't see why you wouldn't want to join the 2023 class. I kind of want to shift off this. I want to talk about another guy I think that's trending really well and OU seems to be in a pretty good spot for is Makari Vickers. Makari, talking about the defensive backs, he's extremely talented and someone that, OU's going back to the Sunshine State for, seems to be in a really good spot for with his commitment scheduled for the 26th of this month. And I feel like Oklahoma's in a pretty good spot. Do you guys have anything to add? Parker, Travis, JP, Jose, anyone?
Good call out on the recruitment or the commitment date. I saw on Twitter, someone commented on our post thinking that he was committing on Friday, but they confused him with another kid that also has seatbelt in his Twitter name. And I did see that kid posted something was happening on Friday. I just have no idea who that, what it is. I think it's a 24 commit.
Gotcha. As far as Vickers is concerned, I mean, I've had a crystal ball in for Vickers in Oklahoma's favor since June 7th, I want to say. Ever since Oklahoma locked down Keon Brown, it's felt like, okay, that was kind of the final missing piece of the puzzle, because it's difficult to get a kid from that far away to make a move like that on his own. But if you get a buddy in it with him and you're already trending favorably for the kid, as Oklahoma was for Vickers at the time, in my mind, that sealed the deal. And he still took an official visit to Alabama. He took an official visit to Michigan. Those are the other two schools in his top three that are going to have a hat on the table for his decision. But I do feel like there is enough working in Oklahoma's favor right now for them to be able to close out the recruitment of Makari Vickers. And that is one of those kids that you are simply not accustomed to seeing Oklahoma land. We are talking about a top 100 national player at the cornerback position from the state of Florida. When was the last time a kid like that came to the University of Oklahoma? It's completely out of the ordinary, particularly not just a cornerback, but the entire defensive side of the football, right? To pull a kid like that out of Florida on the defensive side is something that OU fans are not accustomed to. And so that tells you how much headway, that shows you how much headway this new staff has already made in recruiting the areas that are going to be of great emphasis to them from a geographical standpoint. I really, really like what Jay Valai has done with his class, because you get Josiah Wagner from the state of Washington. Now you're in the driver's seat to get Makari Vickers from Florida, and the hometown kid, Jacoby Johnson from right up the road in Mustang. Those are 3 national top 200 players that you can plug and play at cornerback, and they all 3 have their own strengths. Johnson's going to be one of the biggest and most formidable cornerbacks in the entire country at 6'3". He'll play north of 200 pounds. Wagner's a smaller guy at 5'11", 170, but has the versatility to play corner or to play nickel. With Vickers, he's a guy that's been a major contributor on both sides of the ball at the high school level, but ultimately has his highest ceiling in the defensive secondary. There's going to be more talent in this recruiting class in the secondary, much like the conversation we were having with the defensive line. I believe there's going to be more talent in the secondary when you look at this recruiting class than there has been in any single class for Oklahoma in a long, long time.
And, you know, something I was actually watching your podcast with Brandon Drum that you guys put out yesterday, I believe it was, and you were talking about the top 100 players and the scenario of OU. What blew my mind was the fact that you brought up that OU hasn't had, what was it, more than 3 top 100 players in the last 12 years, I think.
They haven't had more than 5. So 5 is their most.
5. That's insane, because right now, Oklahoma, like you said, if Derek LeBlanc gets bumped up a little bit, one spot, hardly anything. He has a good season. He's going to be a top, for sure, 100 player. You add Makari Vickers. Could you add Jacoby Johnson? I mean, this class is arguably the best class that OU will have seen in, 10, 15 years. It's hard to really.
It very much is. It will be the best class.
It's hard to really fathom that. Venables has a really good track record, and it's unprecedented for a first-year head coach to come in and do what they're doing right now.
What's wild is Marcus Freeman's doing the exact same thing, and he hasn't had near the experience that Brent Venables has. So that there exists a world where 2 first-time head coaches, I mean, I know everybody's going after Notre Dame players now and whatnot, but I mean, they're going to end up near the top of the rankings. So there exists a world where 2 guys who have never been head coaches before land the number 1 and number 2 classes. Now, I'm going to not put anything past Bama to continue their reign of terror of just 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. Obviously, Texas is going to have something to say about that if they keep adding some people and don't have anybody drop during their season after they inevitably get curb stomped by Texas. But it's interesting because I think that narrative has to die. That first-time head coach, even coach at a new school. I think we're getting that. We have the proven coach, but I think we're seeing what Texas always got, that new coach bump where it's like, oh, no, everything's going to be different. Now we're really going to, turn this thing around. But we're turning it around from going 11-2. So it's like, Venables – he has a lot to fix, if you will, to upgrade, to go from good to great. But it's not like what Bob took over. So he's got a little bit of a head start.
So let's get in. Oh, go ahead, JP.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick, going back to what Jacob kind of started talking about with Makari Vickers and Parker talking about pulling a kid like that out of Florida. I was in a space a couple months ago. Well, not even a couple months ago, really. I think right around the new year, right after Brent Venables had been announced, and some LSU cat, and he was like I think one of their recruiting guys. He had like 7,000 followers, something like that. But me and him were kind of going back and forth in space. He was like, "You really think that OU's going to be able to pull kids out of Florida? You're telling me that that's going to continue to happen?" And I was like, I mean, we're OU. Like, why wouldn't we be able to? Like, has it happened as of yet? No, but we have Brent Venables, who's as proven a defensive coach as there is, right? You add Todd Bates into that mix, Miguel Chavis, Jay Valai. Like, why would we not be able to? They already have roots there. And, just to see some stuff like this happening is just kind of, it's like, I don't say vindictive. I'm not trying to be like, whatever, but it's just kind of cool to see us do this at the defensive level, because we saw it from the offensive level for years, obviously with Lincoln, but being able to do this defensively and also have really great offensive recruiting even still with Jeff Levy, I think it's going to set us up for success moving forward.
Let's get into some questions from the chat here. Let me see if I can find it real quick. But someone was asking about Jordan Renaud and if he has made it public when he is committing.
He has not made it public when he is committing. No, but I'll tell you this. I mentioned earlier, it looks like Alabama's going to end up flipping Keon Keeley at this rate from Notre Dame. They also just picked up a commitment from Hunter Osborne, 4-star defensive lineman out of Hewitt-Trussville in Alabama, not much more than an hour ago. And so you take those two things into consideration. I don't know that Jordan Renaud makes it back to Tuscaloosa at any point. And if that's the case, I think this timeline could start to accelerate, because initially the plan was to take official visits with OU and Alabama come the fall. But if Bama already has an idea of the direction that they're going, and I think right now they're on pace to add Edric Hill as well. So if you have Hill, Hunter Osborne, Yanze Pierre, and then you lock down Keon Keeley as well, I think that about gift wraps Jordan Renaud for Oklahoma. I already have a crystal ball in. I believe OU is going to be the destination. I was talking to sources even before Renaud got on campus on Friday that were very, very confident that things were heading Oklahoma's way. When you looked at the vibe surrounding that recruitment, that was obviously validated this weekend. I put the prediction in yesterday. And I do feel as though at this point he's going to be a Sooner. It really is just a matter of when. And to be honest, I don't have a clear inclination of what that timetable may be. But again, I don't know that it's more than, I would say, 2 months off. If I had to take a stab at a guess, I would say sometime within the next 2 months. I don't know if it takes much longer than that for Renaud.
A couple other guys that we're getting asked about is Cecilia and Jacoby Johnson as far as their timeline goes. I haven't seen anything. Do you guys know anything about their timelines?
I don't expect a decision from Cecilia until well into the football season. With Jacoby Johnson, I would think sometime this month, at the very latest, early to mid-September, but we're getting close on that one.
I do think it's interesting. I want to speak to a little bit of the Jordan Renaud. We've had a lot of dominoes in this class so far. It will continue, of course. Ones that jump straight to mind that might speed up some announcements was like the Troy Bowles commitment to Georgia. Lewis Carter wants Troy Bowles. I don't think there's any surprise to anybody that they committed same day. It was, we had those two on the board. Once we knew Troy was going to Georgia, we got Lewis Carter, which is awesome. Getting Lewis Carter is a fantastic get. He's a great linebacker. And then you look at McCarty Vickers, Caleb Downs, them getting the commitment from him. And then shortly after, you see a lot of crystal balls for McCarty Vickers to go to OU. So when you look at now Osborne going to Alabama on the defensive line, that, again, as Parker said, pushes Renaud. Now, that can be looked at as we're only getting players that are being recruited over by Bama and Georgia. But I look at it as we're getting players that chose us over every single school that there is other than Bama or other than Georgia for those particular players. I got into this discussion last night with an Ohio State fan, actually, about McCarty Vickers. I was excited. I was like, he's the number 6 safety in the class. That's big time. He's like, well, it's just because Bama wanted Caleb Downs. I said, yeah, but, that's fine. What about all the other schools? What about Michigan? What about Ohio State? What about Florida? What about Miami? What about Texas A&M? What about USC? What about Oregon? What about all these schools? They don't want the number 6 safety, in the country, because we beat all them out. Alabama has the number 1 and the number 2 safeties in the entire class committed to them. Like, it is no knock. If you get the number six player in the country, or number 6 safety in the country, you did great on your safety recruiting. Doesn't matter who you may or may not have lost out to in the process. So just an interesting way to think about that kind of stuff. But sorry, I wanted to touch on that domino effect.
You're good. All right. Another question we had here, and it was from one of our commenters from this morning's video. Stepping away from recruiting here for a second, is what do we all think the team record will be, win-loss, and why? Who wants to start? You want to start, JP?
Sure. I think my heart wants to say 11-1. Head says 10-2. I truly think that we should be able to get through our non-conference, and just based off of talent and what they should have. Obviously we can talk about last year with Texas being 5-7, and their defense is it. But they do have a lot of offensive talent, depending on if they're clicking or not by the Red River rivalry, and that game is always crazy anyway. I could see us potentially, dropping that game. But other than that, I don't really see any other one. I mean, Kansas State's going to be decent this year as well. Obviously Baylor, but I'm not worried about Baylor offensively. I'm not really worried about Kansas State too much offensively. They have Adrian Martinez, and he's good with his feet as well. He's an okay thrower of the football. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I land. If we don't drop one in Nebraska, I think I feel comfortable saying that we're going to be 11-1. I don't see us dropping one in Nebraska, even in Lincoln. That's a tough place to play.
I'm with you. I think 11-1 is what I've talked about on our show as far as I see the record going. That Nebraska game scares me a little bit just because it's in Lincoln. It's going to be rocking there. Kansas State, as you mentioned, I think it's going to be a pretty sneaky good football team this year that not a lot of people are talking about. Baylor's always Baylor, but I mean, I think 11-1 is very realistic, and I hate seeing all these 9-3, 8-4 comments and stuff. I genuinely believe we're more likely to go undefeated than lose 4 games.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think I'm going to stick with 10-2. I think I went on your show, JP and Trav, and said 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
I could see where OU could go 12-0. I could see where they go 11-1. I just feel like that there's going to be some growing pains. There's a lot of new schemes. There's a lot of both sides of the ball. It's totally different. And when you're the best team in the conference, you're getting everyone's best game or best performance. So everyone's going to be getting up and trying to beat you every given Saturday, which that's nothing new. I just feel like that it could bite them at one point. Maybe I'm being too negative here, but before I pass it off to Trav, we've got nearly 600 people in here. Everyone hit the subscribe button, like the video, and keep commenting. We're going to go through some questions as we go through and maybe talk a little David Hicks later.
All right. So, yeah, I always have this caveat every time I talk about records. I always want to I implore people to look at the schedule. Look at the schedule. Don't say, just going into a season, we probably should be pretty good. 10 wins is a good season. 11 wins is a good season. You have to show me the losses. And I think at worst, we lose to 2 of these 4, basically. Kansas State's going to be good this year. I'm high on them. OSU is going to take a step back defensively big time. They've had a lot of players leave. They had a very old defense last year. And obviously Jim Knowles is out the door. They're going to be asking Spencer Sanders to carry that team, and I have zero faith in him to do that. Baylor, until somebody knocks him off, Aranda has proven that he is a worthy opponent. So they would be probably my most likely to beat us. But Texas, you can never rule them out, just because that rivalry. I know it's super cliche, but that rivalry game, you got to throw out records, you got to throw out rankings, because both teams get up for it. I know we waited to the second half to get up for it last time, and they only got up for it in the first half, but still there was a getting up scenario happening. So I think at worst we're 10-2 with a Big 12 championship and a shot at the playoff. So
yeah, and I generally would concur with that. I don't know if I can show you where the loss is on the schedule, but I think it's fair to assume the Sooners will trip up somewhere along the line. This is going to be a very talented football team. I would say on paper, they have the highest ceiling of any program in the Big 12. I think Texas is probably the most ostensibly talented team, but talent only carries you so far when you don't have culture, and that's something that the Longhorns haven't had in upwards of a decade. So I'm not going to drink the burnt orange Kool-Aid. I did for a time last preseason, and look where things ended up for Texas. I'm going to have to see it to believe it at this point when it comes to their resurgence. So I am very high on Kansas State. I do think it is, and Travis mentioned this, you got to look at the schedule. You can't just say, oh, this feels like a 9-10 win football team. I think they'll win 9-10 games. No, you have to look at the schedule and look at all the factors that Oklahoma has in their favor versus in their opposition. And I think one of the critical factors that they have working in their favor this year is that they get arguably their three toughest games of the season: Baylor, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, at home. Obviously, Texas is always a neutral site game, and obviously that's always going to be as tough of an environment, as tough of a game as Oklahoma encounters all season. But I trust that Oklahoma is going to get past Texas. It seems as though year in and year out over the last, I would say close to a decade at this point, the Sooners more often than not just find a way. And they're always close games with the Longhorns and the Cotton Bowl, but the Sooners always find a way. I like where Kansas State is headed. I really like where Baylor's headed. I'm not as high on Oklahoma State, but I still think that's a team that can cause problems. And Oklahoma gets all three at home in the comfort of Owen Field this year. That is going to work in their favor very significantly, especially if you think back to the spring game. You think about the fact that 75,000 fans were in attendance for an exhibition. I get the feeling the Sooners are going to have a legit home field advantage this year for the first time in a while. That's going to come into play too. So my prediction for the regular season is 11-1. Again, I can't point at a specific game and tell you that's the loss. It could be Kansas State. It could be TCU with Chandler Morris. It could be a team that we're completely overlooking, like an Iowa State coming off a down year, but still a very well-coached team in Matt Campbell. It could be the defending Big 12 champions in Baylor. I don't know where it is, but I think when you look at the landscape of college football, it is the exception and not the rule if you have three teams across the entire country that finish the regular season undefeated. Most years, it's only one or two, and in some years, it's none. Now, going 12-0 is a very, very tall task. I don't think the Sooners do that in 2022. But I do think they have what it takes in terms of culture, in terms of chemistry, in terms of buy-in, and in terms of talent to be able to go 11-1. So that is my record prediction for Oklahoma.
So I agree with how you ended it. I think Oklahoma's got the talent to be 11-1. But I'm looking at the schedule now, and I think it all depends on that Nebraska game. It's the first real challenge for Oklahoma. Can we live up to the standards? If Oklahoma wins that game, then I really don't think we really face another big game and a challenge until Texas. Because after Nebraska, we have K-State. That's the only reason I think that's what will determine how the season outcome. If we lose that game, I could see it kind of being a little bit of a ding. First time in a while that Dylan Gabriel's played football. First year that this entire offense is in place at Oklahoma. I could see them kind of maybe getting low potentially. Hopefully they come back, and like Parker said, it is at home, so we do have that advantage. But if we beat Nebraska, I think 11-1 is very realistic. If we lose, I could even see 9-3 at worst, but that would have to be like catastrophe has hit the locker room, and people are kind of down after that Nebraska game, and they need a bit of a lift. But again, like Parker mentioned multiple times, the fact that K-State, Oklahoma State are at home, and Baylor, those are going to be. That's going to be probably the thing that helps Oklahoma not go 9-3, because the hardest games are in Norman. So yeah, there's definitely the lowest. I mean, 9-3 for most colleges. For Texas would probably be the best thing to ever happen to most of them in their entire lifetime. For Oklahoma, that sounds like crap. So, we'll see how it goes. But I think that was a good conversation there. So let's get back to recruiting. We had another guy ask, and it's not so much about Oklahoma, but I think it's a fun one to ask, and we were talking about it before we all hopped on for this live. Malachi Nelson, he visited A&M this last weekend. Does USC start stressing out about him potentially decommitting? Is that even actually a possibility at this point? Because we did see Zachariah Branch visit them a few weeks back. What do we think? Are we pro him? The flip, is that something that Oklahoma, I know like in the long term or in short term, him going to A&M may affect us because we are going to be playing against A&M more than likely against Malachi Nelson when Oklahoma moves to the SEC.
Yeah, so I'll give you my take on this, and then I got to jump off the stream here because I got to get moving on to the next thing. But if y'all have any more questions, welcome to hit my DMs with them, and we'll do this again at some point. But as far as the Malachi Nelson is concerned, that situation, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for him to end up anywhere other than USC. However, I do think it's a possibility because I think the visit to Texas A&M, more than anything, is a warning shot, a shot across the bow, as it were, at the USC NIL collectives, donors, boosters, etc., everybody that has a hand in making sure that Malachi Nelson gets his at the University of Southern California. And you look at what the market is for quarterbacks right now in the 2023 cycle. We all saw the number for Jaden Rashada, right? And that's just one example. Right now, a quarterback of Malachi Nelson's prestige, based on the NIL deals that are being handed out, whether publicly or behind the scenes, the value for a kid like that is 8 figures at this point in time. And I'd be willing to bet that Malachi Nelson doesn't have anything lined up that even approaches that figure, mostly because he committed to USC so early in the process, and that was really before the market started to blow up for quarterbacks. So I think this is Malachi Nelson's way of saying, hey, look, I better get paid for the player that I am if I'm going to come to USC, and you guys need to figure it out, because apparently word is, and I don't have nearly as many sources out that way as I do here, obviously, but I do have a few folks out that way that I trust as far as information goes. And the word is that USC's NIL situation is not in ideal shape. And this is probably going to be what kicks things into gear, because they're going to have to scrounge together whatever is necessary to keep Malachi Nelson in the boat. Because if he goes elsewhere, that whole class falls apart. I don't think that's a secret. If he goes somewhere else, Mekhi Lemon's going somewhere else, can almost promise you Zach Branch is going somewhere else. It already looks like Braxton Myers is going to end up somewhere else. So this thing could all go haywire in a hurry if Malachi Nelson gets disgruntled. So when you have as much riding on one single kid as USC does, you've got to make sure he stays happy. And I think Malachi Nelson probably realizes that. It's a bit of a shrewd move to take that visit to Texas A&M and to give off the impression that you're looking around. But I think it's going to ensure that USC gets their ducks in a row. I don't think it's a great look for USC. It's never a good look when the vocal leader of your class, your 5-star quarterback, is visiting another program, especially a program with a reputation like that of Texas A&M. So I feel like this is more of a net negative for USC than it is a positive, but you'd figure that it all comes to a peaceful resolution because, again, people out in SoCal are going to do whatever it takes to make sure Malachi Nelson ends up in the scarlet and gold. With that, I'm going to bounce out. Appreciate you guys. And like I said, anybody has any other questions that they need answered, feel free to hit my DMs and I will answer as many of them as I can. But we'll do this again sometime, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Parker.
All right.
Are you guys all pro or against Malachi going to A&M? I know we've had this discussion on our show, and the reason that I'm against it, as much as I hate Tebow and would love to laugh at him for losing his top guy, is what Parker just mentioned. Guys like Mekhi Lemon and Zach Branch, I think, would follow him to A&M. And the A&M 23 class at the moment is pretty crappy. And I think them getting him would just make it, good.
Yeah, I mean, their class, it's crappy in the rankings, but it reminds me a lot of our 2021 class, I believe it was. That was real small, but it had Caleb Williams and a couple other, highly ranked guys in it. They've only got 7 commits as of a little bit earlier, I guess. I don't know if they got anybody today, but they're all top 100 players. I think they might be all like top 50 players or something like that. So it's a situation where they're still going to end up with a top 10 class. I'd be willing to bet that they're going to end up with a top 10 class simply because they can backfill the numbers, but they've got the second highest average recruit rating right now in the country. So when you look at something like that, they're going big game hunting. There's no doubt about it. I think they took such a big class last year with 30 and then had transfers in, obviously. When you look at the Overton brothers, they had to take both of them, of course. That was part of the deal. That gave them 6 defensive linemen in that class. 5 of them were in the top 10 of the rankings, which is just absurd. But I think here's the thing. I think I've never been worried about A&M. They've never given any reason. They've had talent. They've been recruiting well since they've been in the SEC. And we still don't have any proof that the big money upfront model leads to wins. You can actually make a lot of arguments that it doesn't, because again, one of my favorite quotes is from Marvin Hagler. It's hard to wake up and do road work at 5 a.m. if you slept in silk pajamas. And Texas A&M is a team full of dudes sleeping in silk pajamas. So if you've got all these guys that have a bunch of money and they're in the locker room and they're pulling up in their G-Wagons and their Lambos and their Aston Martins, all kinds of stuff like this, like that doesn't translate to the guys that are all nitty gritty, right? They've already made it. They're in the silk pajamas already. So we have no proof. When it comes to the teams that are spending big in NIL, we can list them, right? So like A&M, Texas, Miami, Tennessee, USC, we can say their NIL collectives are way behind, but Malachi Nelson is signed with Level Up Sports, I believe it's called. Mike Vick's there to expand their NIL opportunities. Malachi is driving a brand new 2022 Mercedes around campus. Like it's like he's doing fine. Like we can't say that USC's NIL situation is, well, you just don't have anything. Like no, they're getting paid fine. The thing is, it's not coming from a collective type situation, but there are companies out there. I mean, Caleb Williams signed $1 million Beats deal like within like 5 days of being on campus, which means he signed it before he got to campus because that was set up by USC for him. So what you lack in actual like institutional money to go towards something or collective money, you have market money that they can direct that way. So that being said, as I list off those schools, now let's go back through them. A&M hasn't won anything since 1939. 4-loss season after 4-loss season, lost to Mississippi State at home. Miami has had 1 double-digit win season in the last 18 years. Texas just went 5-8 with 6 straight losses, including 1 to Kansas. USC just went 4-8. Lost to everybody. And then Tennessee, they've been no good. They've got recruiting violations issues and all kinds of stuff like that. So when you look at everybody that's spending big money, they're having to compensate for bad coaching, bad culture, markets full of distractions. You know who's not throwing out the big NIL deals? Notre Dame, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma. Well, look at all who's near the top of the recruiting rankings, and more importantly, look whose trophy cases are full. Because all those teams, they win a lot, and they haven't gone on these decade droughts of just complete irrelevance. So I think with that, I would rather, and that's the longest possible way to say, I would love for him to go to A&M because it will tear down that class so quickly that he'll lose his top 4 ranked commitments, I believe, 3 or 4 ranked commitments. And Tackett Curtis will be the highest ranked player in their class, the linebacker that Brian Odom secured. But they'll have nowhere to go because who's the highest ranked non-committed quarterback? Like the 19th ranked.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, the 19th ranked dude in the class. And talk about the poetic justice. Because if indeed Malachi waits until the season, mid-season to decommit, he's going to leave Lincoln right before signing day with no class. Weird. Can you think about the last team that got left right before signing day? I
don't remember that.
Complete chaos? Yeah, exactly.
Nah, yeah, I don't got it. I don't know.
I think that would be the real poetic justice. And that is why I want the whole class to decommit like 10 days before signing day. Because it would be
perfect.
Ultimate karma, and there would be nobody there to fill the gaps, especially at quarterback. And who'd go into a guy that Malachi Nelson was just in lockstep with for 2 years, and he leaves. What quarterback's like, sign me up? Because apparently that's a great situation over there in South. So, anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
The highest ranked quarterback uncommitted is number 25 or 19 composite, and it's a 3-star. The only potential saving grace they could have is if they can somehow pull a quarterback away from Nick Saban, which is damn near impossible because those kids usually stay at Alabama.
Right, because A&M doesn't have a quarterback committed right now. So there would be no if Malachi went to Bama, I totally get it. They'd be like, well, I'll trade spots, right? But A&M doesn't have a quarterback committed. So if they want to put all their chips into trying to get Malachi in this class, then USC is going to be left without a signal caller.
Yep.
JP, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think that, going back to your original question, Brandon, I can see it being an issue if Malachi gets to A&M just long term, potentially. Obviously, we got to play in the SEC eventually. I don't think Jimbo's the best quarterback. I'm going to say evaluator is not the right word. What am I looking for? He's not the best quarterback developer. He's good, but I think, the last couple of quarterbacks he's had has shown that, he's just okay. So from that standpoint, it's, what it is. But obviously him being at USC, we would see him less. Though it would be nice to see him, again, leave Tebow and kind of vindicate us, if you will, for everything we've been through. But yeah, no, I think it would be interesting to see what happens because I agree with Trav. I mean, A&M kind of has, for all intents and purposes, that different type of money. They got oil money. Okay, they got land money. They give whatever you need.
Allegedly.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
All right, let's see if there's any questions.
Can I ask you guys a quick food question since you guys we stole your wings question on every single interview we have, and Bro and I are happy to announce that everybody has picked ranch over blue cheese. So we we were made fun of on this show, but all the recruits are with us. So a question that we've been asking around to some of these recruits, and we've seen it everywhere. It's a pretty popular food question, but is a hot dog a sandwich?
Of course.
That's the right answer.
Yeah, it's on two sides of bread.
Yeah, technically.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. A lot of people say no, so I was
Anything encased in bread.
Can be considered a sandwich.
I mean, fried chicken is technically a sandwich with breading on each side, meat in the middle.
I mean, it's definitely a sandwich in the hood because you got to use white bread instead of buns. Some people.
You know who we haven't?
I
Sorry.
agree.
You know who we haven't talked about today? And I don't know why. David Hicks.
we talked about him.
Not
No,
really. We talked
not
about it
really.
before we started, and we probably should have, gotten a little bit of Parker's insight. But we've got Trav here, JP. These guys know. What do you guys think? Do you think he's a potential lock? I mean, a lot of people think it may be Anthony Evans, but it seems like the locks were just the guys that were on campus this weekend.
JP, go ahead.
Me? Hey, you don't want all the connections, big breath. I think David Hicks had an amazing time at Oklahoma this weekend and enjoyed himself a lot. Obviously, you guys probably saw what he wrote. And I don't know if is he doing that thing that Caleb Williams did, where like he's keeping up with his recruitment through Sports Illustrated? Because I saw somebody wrote an article about like his time seriously, like somebody wrote an article about his time this weekend at Oklahoma.
I didn't see the article. I don't remember who wrote it though, but I saw the article you're talking about.
I don't know if he's doing the same thing. You remember what Caleb did, where he would like document his journey or whatever.
Yeah, he did like a weekly newsletter in Sports Illustrated.
Yeah,
DJ Lagway is doing that now by himself on YouTube. But yeah, seems like
it seemed like Hicks may be doing that. I didn't read it, but
I'm sure Florida fans are very excited that DJ Lagway is doing that.
Yeah. All I'm gonna say is Todd Bates is that dude. That's all I'm saying. He's that dude. He is. And moving forward, he's gonna continue to get us great defensive linemen. I like where we're at with DJ Hicks from everything I've heard, from everything people have told me. Obviously, Trav, I'll let him expound a little bit because I get a lot of my info from
Yeah, it's Hicks has been to Oklahoma a lot. Like a lot. I think he's like 7 times maybe. He actually was, when I was on a visit with Gentry, he was on a visit to the Iowa State game where Perrion had his murder. So the guys at campus a ton for not being very close to campus. Katy is not close to Norman by any means. It's very close to A&M. That's why a lot of people think you'd go there. I think it does matter that A&M took 6 defensive linemen in the last class. That's a lot, and a lot of very highly ranked ones. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, he's so good, he's a competitor, he shouldn't be scared of competition. That's what A&M fans are saying, right? But at some point, it's just kind of dumb. It would be dumb. It's dumb to enter yourself in a competition with 6 other dudes that have been on campus a whole year ahead of you, when you could go to a place with a coach who you're closest with. His closest relationship throughout his recruitment is Todd Bates. That is on record. That is not a question. So you can go there. You can be part of the first defensive class that it's not even a total rebuild. So it's not a situation like it was a Buki situation. Like Buki was a guy that, and that's why I always have respect for Buki. He committed to OU when OU had a trash defense. I mean, bad. And, that takes a lot for a 5-star to do that. So we're close enough with Hicks, I think, from last year. We've got plenty of talent along the line. He has a chance to play earlier but we don't need him to play right now. But yeah, he very much enjoyed his visit. One of the things that they did at the party in the palace, they went around in a circle and all of the visitors said what they liked about Oklahoma. Not commits, but visitors. And David Hicks was one of the first ones to speak up and speak openly and honestly about what he liked about the staff, liked about the program, everything like that. So with all of that, yes, I mean, I fully expect Hicks to be a Sooner. And I think he will be one of 4 interior defensive linemen to go with 3 defensive ends. So that's my thoughts on it. Now he wants to announce at an All-American game at the end of the season, next season. I think that helps us hold on to him if in fact that he's in the boat, if you will, silently. I think we can easily make a big push just saying, hey, he didn't go to A&M. That was a very good sign. And then it kind of lines up with, policies if we're talking about it. But with this, you have to look at the teams that are in competition for him, right? Namely A&M. If they go out and they don't look like world beaters on the defensive line, and OU starts to play well and reels off a lot of big wins and everything like that, then I think he sees that. He sees Bates' development. He knows Bates has 3 first-rounders under his belt, couple high first-rounders under his belt. So I don't think there's any question about how long he's been there, the development. He's not going to chase the money because OU wouldn't be in his top schools if he was. So, yeah, I'm, again, the longest way to say I expect him to be soon.
And I like the point you brought up about competition. At this point for A&M, it's kind of a dumb argument because you brought in, what'd you say, like 6 guys, 7 guys on the D-line last year?
6 defensive linemen, but 5 of them were in the top 10.
Yeah,
3 of them were in the top 4.
Yeah, so like you've already created competition in one class. So at this, it's like you said, those guys are already having to beat the older guys, beat each other out. I mean, they could potentially see transfer portal be, casualty to the transfer portal in a couple of years because, I mean, at the end of the day, A&M probably will get 1 or 2 decent defensive linemen every other class or every class, which will push the guys that just weren't able to compete, in that room, and they'll go elsewhere. I mean, I think it doesn't make sense even for Hicks to go to A&M at this point because they're just that room has too much depth. I think that's pretty essentially what they're kind of falling victim to. Too many people came in one class and there's no room for the younger guys.
I mean, what I'll add is there's only so many spots for these kids to play. While you might be able to secure a decent amount of money to commit and play at A&M, but ultimately, if you're not playing on the field, that money's going to look like a drop in the bucket compared to what a top defensive lineman in the NFL can make. And is it really worth, maybe not starting for years and years and years, which Alabama does it all the time, but Alabama's got a track record. It's worth the wait. I mean, A&M, you're just hoping that you get to play and you beat someone out and then you get developed to be a first-round pick. What happens if it doesn't come together or you get hurt? Being there 5-6 years, just depending on how it all works out. I just think that, A&M, they're extremely talented. I feel really good about Hicks. But I will also add, I don't necessarily think he's going to move up his commitment timeline. He could, maybe, if some more commitments come out. He's set to announce, I believe, at the All-American game in January. So it's still an eternity away. OU puts together a solid season. They keep recruiting him hard. I mean, that's a great haul. And I will add, we're 24 subscribers away from 4,800. Hit the subscribe button. Get us there. Come on.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. He's
You know,
he's
got
good at
to.
the shameless plugs. But like, do you guys think OU's going to have that same problem along the defensive line? Because I mean, we just talked about it earlier on our show. This 23 defensive line class is already loaded, and you've got the potential to add a Cecilia Kana, a Jordan Renaud, a David Hicks here. So in 2024, is that something that's going to make us lose out on top defensive linemen, specifically David Stone? Is that something that he's going to consider? Because I mean, we all mentioned it right here as something that might be hurting A&M because that 22 class was so loaded along that line. But I feel like our 23 line is going to be just as good, if not better, than A&M's 2022 defensive line. Is that not going to play any effect in our 2024 recruiting?
I don't believe so. Go ahead, JP.
I was just going to say I don't think so because I think, and I don't know if this is where you're going to go with the Trav, but in my mind, the difference between us and A&M is paying those guys heavily, as opposed to the reason that people are coming to OU, which is the culture that Brent Venables and Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis, you know, especially on D-line, is. I mean, that's why Vaseka is coming to OU, right? I mean, the connection that you have with Miguel Chavis being on Owen Field, talking to him for hours, right? And the soul mission, that piece. Now, again, we still have a lot of linemen on there, but again, maybe you're willing to go ahead and be there because you like where you're at more. You're more invested than, oh, I'm just worried about getting my money. You know, does that make sense? That's how I feel about it. Trav, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the key is in the numbers. I think when we talk about our 23 class, when I said they took 6 defensive linemen, those are DL. Those are interior defensive linemen. I'm not saying that they took, like, yes, I say 3 edge and 4 defensive linemen, 4 interior guys. I think if we keep the number at 4 being the max and 3 on the defensive ends being the max, I don't think you deal with any attrition from that. And I think that David Stone's going to be one of the first ones in the boat anyways. So where it may slow down somebody is, like I said, another top guy going, but the fact that, again, David Stone will have to beat out one of 4 rotational players. Like, David Hicks would have to beat out one of 6 rotational players. That's a little tougher to do, specifically since they've got the 1 ranked, 2 ranked, 4th ranked, 5th ranked, and 10th ranked. Tough to do. Gabriel Downlow Brindley was Brownlow Dindy was like their 4th highest ranked defensive lineman, which is insane. Because we were talking about it as, oh man, if we can get him, that's really a program changer. He's 4th best according to the rankings.
That's crazy.
You know, once you get up that high, you're not really differentiating between too much. But yeah, I personally don't think we're going to run into that because we're not going to bring in 6 in the class.
Yeah, just a balancing act, and A&M did not do a very good job last year. But I mean, it's like you said, they're even though their class is small right now, they are very good players at the end of the day. We did have a question come in about Ted Roof. What are our thoughts on him? Have you been able to meet him, Trav?
No, I haven't. But I've talked to recruits and asked about him, and I mean, they absolutely love him. I know initially when he got hired, it was kind of an out of the blue type hire. We're like, oh man, and I think it was because we were like, Schmitty, home run. Brent Venables, home run. That turnip seed, man, that's a home run. Ted Roof. It's like, who? But it's Anthony Hill. When Anthony Hill was asked about his time at Oklahoma, he brought up Ted Roof as like one of the reasons he was considering Oklahoma. He talked about how good of a relationship he had with Ted Roof, how good of a coach he was, all kinds of stuff like that. So, I mean, like top targets like that are even, and I get that Anthony Hill, we weren't his top 2. He goes to A&M. Totally get it. But when you're when the best linebacker in the country is name dropping Ted Roof as a positive about a staff, then you have to assume that everybody else is kind of feeling that as well.
I always felt like, and I'm a trusting dude normally, but if Brent Venables, if that guy trusts that guy to run his defense, that's all I need to know. Honestly,
I'm with you.
I've always wondered if it was like if Ted Roof is there to kind of help establish how the defense is going to work. Like him and Venables will call it together, and then eventually Ted will kind of teach Todd, and hopefully, when Ted is ready to either retire or move on to another opportunity, Todd will get bumped up to like the lead D coordinator rather than just, I think, isn't he like the run game coordinator right now? Or, on the defensive side of the ball? I can't remember.
Bates, yeah, he's the run game, and then Valai is the pass game coordinator as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought it was like a kind of just to establish what the hierarchy, because it would be tough if we lost Todd Bates. I think that would be the biggest loss on this defensive staff, not with recruiting and coaching. That dude develops like no other in the country, and obviously recruiting. We're seeing how well he does right now, and if you guys look back at his track record, those of you watching at Clemson, he's one of the best recruiters in the country.
He won Rival Recruiter of the Year in 2019 when he landed 2 top 3, I think, prospects. Those were the first rounders that so the big time 5-stars that he brought in, he turned them into first rounders. Simple as that. I got a chance early on over spring break, I believe it was, to talk with Jordan Kelly about Todd Bates and the differences and whatnot in the defense and the calls and everything like that. And he was like, man, I cannot wait. And that's why he had such a good spring. He was really enjoying the change. He's like, man, we have like 20 different plays along the defensive line now. On the, Grinch, we had like 4. It's like he enjoys it. He makes it fun. Again, Bates, Recruiter of the Year in 2019 for Rivals, a guy that came to play with, under Brent Venables, having a blast, really mentoring Miguel Chavis. And I think that's important to understand because Todd Bates was one of the only coaches in the country at a top level to coach all 4 positions on the defensive line. So he did that at Clemson. So he coached defensive ends and the interior. So that's very rare. Well, now when he's at OU, he only coaches the interior, but he's got a first-time on the field role coaching defensive ends, but it's a guy he knows extremely well, that he's worked with, that he obviously recruits with, that he obviously rides shotgun with, as we saw in the video today. So I think that is a lot of the reason that Bates is in for the long haul with us. Is I think he'll eventually be a defensive coordinator with us, and with his relationship with Miguel Chavis, I think he wants to help develop him as an on-field coach, as a recruiter, and kind of help guide that star because he's an absolute star. He was like Colton Vasek was a heat check. That's all that was. Vasek was off to Oregon. He was off to Clemson. He was off to Texas, all this stuff. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to give him a call. And 48 hours later, he's a Sooner. Like, that's the thing. He has been unbeatable when you go back to what he was able to do in the last cycle to now locking in PJ Adebawore and then Colton Vasek and leading for Cecilia. That's number 7 edge rusher, number 9 edge rusher, number 19 edge rusher. That would all be Sooners. A heck of a first full effort from Miguel Chavis.
No kidding. I mean, it's ridiculous. But, kind of switching topics, I've got a question for you guys. Do you guys think that Dylan Gabriel is a legitimate Heisman, hopeful and is going to compete for the Heisman? I think he will, because I think Levy's going to get the best out of him. They already know each other. I know that they're both at different schools, but Gabriel's already played, in his system for a couple years. They're very familiar. I feel like there's enough talent around. There's enough running backs, enough wide receivers, a good enough offensive line. I think that, and they're going to win. I think that they could end up I think he could be a finalist for a Heisman. I don't think it's ridiculous to say that. What do you guys think?
I think that, when you look at our schedule, kind of like Parker was talking about earlier, I think a lot of things can work in favor for Dylan Gabriel. Now, I'm interested. Obviously, we know he knows Jeff Levy's scheme. I'm interested to see how Jeff Levy adjusts to the defenses that are in the Big 12 because they're a lot different, than the defenses that are in the SEC. SEC has a specific type of athlete. They like to go man-to-man a lot, blitz a lot, obviously. Whereas in the Big 12, obviously Lincoln Riley could not figure out the defenses that are in the Big 12 with 3 high safeties and, dropping 8 a lot, or, different blitz packages, obviously, from the secondary. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Levy adjusts to that. But I think if he calls good games, Dylan absolutely has a shot to put up great numbers. I'm not sure that I'd put him in the Heisman conversation personally, but I don't think there's any reason to say he's not going to have an amazing year still. That's me personally.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Okay, yeah. I think he can. He can. I think it's not out of the possibility for him to win it. But I don't really kind of like what JP's saying. I think he's gonna have a hell of a season. I think he's gonna play well. I think he's gonna make good decisions with the ball. I think he's comfortable in Jeff Levy's offense. I think he's gonna run the offense very well, and I think the offense will score points. And to me, that's more what I'm concerned about. And I think he'll do his job very, very well, and OU will win a lot of games. And so, I think he can win the Heisman, but I kind of, with JP, I don't necessarily know that I'd put him in there, but I'm not too concerned about it.
Yeah, I think he'll have production. He won't have the production to match Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, because they're going to throw the ball a ton, and they'll do a lot with their legs. I don't think, even though Matt Corral had over 100 rushing attempts last year, and I think he had 30 against Bama or something like that. Bama or Tennessee, something like that. But he had 30 in one game. It was ridiculous. But I don't think that he's going to run the ball as much. I think we're going to have to be maintain a top 3 ranking throughout the entire season for the most part in order for Dylan to get to New York. Just because I think 2 of the spots are going to obviously be taken already with the 2 odds-on favorites in Vegas and CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. So when you have that, you have to start looking at who else might get the nod to be a finalist. But the odds are not in the favor. But again, it's usually best player on best team. So if the team plays extremely well, he'll get the look.
Yeah. And also not just CJ and Bryce, but Caleb Williams is coming into the season with a ton of hype. And I'm sure you guys have all seen the tweets about the betting odds. USC has the most bets to win the national championship. Vegas is going to just make a killing at the end of the season when they don't even make a New Year's Six bowl. But it's going to, I think it's Dylan Gabriel is essentially going to be Matt Corral of last season. And that he won't fall off of the Heisman, getting to New York because of an injury. I just think genuinely Stroud and Young will outperform him. And as long as Caleb Williams doesn't disappoint, he'll make it just because his name at this point. Because he is, even though I think Bryce and Stroud way outperformed him last year, Williams has a huge name in college football. And I think that's what's going to drive him to New York as long as he doesn't absolutely suck.
He's got the name, but we've seen him with this coach before. He went 3-2 and almost lost to Kansas. He struggles reading zone coverage badly. The kid's got all the talent in the world, but doesn't have a very big body. He runs a lot. Could he get injured? There's a lot of things that go wrong, and I think part of the mysticism around him is the Texas game. Was it incredible? Absolutely. It was, and I will continue to use this analogy. But the worst thing ever to happen to Caleb Williams was for Marvin Mims to catch that 50-50 ball on the sideline, going in the end zone. Because the worst thing that can ever happen to you when you haven't ever gambled before is to walk into a casino, put in a $20 bill, and hit a jackpot. Then you start thinking, well, this is easy. I'm just going to come. Why don't people do this for a living? I'm just going to come in, put a $20 bill every time in, and then that's how you go broke. I think he had that happen at OU Texas. I think the first time he got in, he was able to do whatever he wanted. Big time running plays, throwing deep, 50-50 ball, doesn't matter. Marvin will come down with it. Later in the year, we saw him throwing into double coverage, making bad plays, taking off when he shouldn't have, running when he shouldn't have. So that's how I think. I think he needs to develop a ton while he's still got that mystique of, oh man, it was the Texas Magic. He's Superman. Yeah, you got to watch the rest of the season because he went 3-2 as a starter and lost the 2 games against ranked opponents that he played. So,
yeah. Another fun one that was just recently asked is, you can only pick one player. Who's the breakout player for the 2022 season?
In college football or Oklahoma?
For OU.
Mm.
My bad.
I've been consistent on Ethan Downs for a while now. And I don't think it's any shock to, well, not, I don't want to say shock, maybe any secret to anybody on OU football team why he was named a captain and why he was brought to OU Big 12 Media Days. Man's wise beyond his years, and he's a beast. You saw flashes last season, and you add a summer of Smitty. You got Miguel Chavis coaching him now. I think he's due for a huge year. I'm on the 2024 Ethan Downs first round pick train. I am very high on him, so I think he's gonna have a breakout year, and we'll be talking about him going to his junior season as a top 5 defensive lineman in the country.
I don't know. I guess I'll go. My question is, can Marvin Mims be considered as a breakout candidate?
You can't count Marvin Mims. We're not going to allow that. He's already that guy.
Anybody that's been an All-American before.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I could see. I don't know. I'm going to need a second to think about because Mims came to my mind because I think he's going to take. I mean, I guess Weiss, in my opinion, I think Theo Weiss is going to explode because I think he finally is going to be able to put it together, stay on the field. He has all the talent. The problem has been just the injuries, and it's just been some unfortunate luck. And I feel like he knows that this is his year. It's time to put it all together and put it on the field in order for him to go play in the NFL, and I think he does.
I want it to be either Clayton Smith or Jalil Farouk. That's just me.
I'm going with my man Jordan Kelly. Had a good spring. Was actually the starter through spring. He was dealing with an injury last year that kind of held him out after he was starting to climb up the rotation. Smitty has completely changed that man's body. He had come over, we were grilling out, and he was wearing, I've told the story before, but he was wearing just a regular long sleeve shirt, and I could see the veins in his shoulders through his shirt. And he wasn't wearing like a Jay Valais medium type situation. Like he wasn't wearing one of these tight shirts. Like it was just, and it was crazy. I'd had a bit of bourbon with dinner and whatnot. And you do that thing where it was always like, go ahead, punch me. And I'm punching him in the stomach. Just insane. I'm swinging at him. And he's like, man, Smitty turned me into the Hulk. It's crazy. So I think he's going to have a massive year. And he's, like I said, he talks about how much he loves Todd Bates. He loves the playbook. He's diving right in. He understands that it's a clean slate. He's been there a while now, and the clock is ticking if he wants to be a draft pick. So he is soaking up absolutely everything that he can to try and get to the NFL. And I think I think I'm going with him.
I'm going to go with Danny Stutzman. I feel like he's the obvious answer here on the defensive
Yeah, I was about to
side
say,
of the ball.
wasn't he a freshman All-American? No, freshman All-Big 12 or something.
I can't remember.
You and Brum both picked just super easy ones. I guess Fleur could be considered an easy one too. But what about Clayton Smith?
I'll pick Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel's going to.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel. Reggie Grimes hasn't been one, right? He hasn't been in any All Big 12 team or All American. Yeah. Then that's my pick. I think I was excited when he committed. As soon as he gets an opportunity, I think he's had enough that he's shown he can perform well. Now it'll just be putting it together and being that dude on the defensive side, on the opposite side of Ethan Downs. And I think that's what's going to benefit them both, Ethan and Reggie on opposing sides there.
My question would be, with this new defensive coach and staff, which player benefits the most? Like that, maybe fell out of favor with the previous staff, and now they're getting a second chance, like you alluded to with Jordan Kelly. Who takes that step because of this new staff? I could see Billy Bowman being that guy. That's just my opinion.
That's the one I was going to say. And not only because of the staff change, but just the commitment to playing him at safety.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he actually knows where he's going to be playing. He's going to be playing there all year. It's not a situation where it's like, hey, if you're a true freshman, we're going to have you playing all 5 positions, in the secondary because of injuries. Like, they like versatility, in the secondary, but they are locked in at playing him at safety, and I like that a lot.
I was going to pick Key Lawrence. I mean, Key Lawrence, I think, was without a doubt, or he was one of the best defensive players we had all last season. It seemed no matter where he was playing, safety or corner, he was really good. And I just think playing with Venables and playing with Valai, I expect to see a huge leap out of Key Lawrence from an already really, really good last season, in my opinion.
I'm going to go Deshaun White. I think we've heard for years his potential. I mean, Brian Odom called him the most instinctual linebacker he's ever coached. And so we know he has the talent. And I forgot who wrote the article. Maybe it was an athletic article about Brent Venables, but they were talking about how early on in the spring, Deshaun White, he shed a tackler, got in the backfield, and, wrapped up or, threw down the running back for loss. And Brent Venables said that wasn't good. He's like, he was confused. What? And he said, high players suck. And he's like, what? Say it with me. High players suck. High players suck. He's talking about you need to be low in the hole. Doesn't matter that you got into the ground. You were high. It's terrible. So he goes back the next play, blows through the hole, gets low, wraps the guy up, just blows him up, and BV's in his face going nuts. And that's how it's done. That's how it's done, right? So I think Deshaun White could also have a big jump this season. We've seen him for 3 years. And he's played a lot of snaps, so he knows what he's doing. But just that next step from good to great, I think we can see him take that step.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't even know. Repeat the question for me one more time.
Which player benefits the most? My dog wanted to say hi. Benefits the most from this new staff, who kind of fell out of favor of the previous staff, wasn't performing
defensively, though, I thought, right?
Really?
Defensively.
Yeah.
Anyone, all of them, every single one. Pick a player. Woody Washington, Key Lawrence, everyone that was on the team. I think. Here's the thing. Whenever Alex Grinch was hired, I think for the time he was the right hire because that defense was god awful. It was literally the worst in the country, or like bottom 3.
Yeah, Alex Grinch actually improved the defense.
Yeah, he at least made it good.
We make fun of him a lot, whatever. Like, Perrion can say all the things he says. I get it. But, like, we were much better at defense under Alex Grinch than we were last year's Mike Stoops. That is in every metric. So,
Oh, yeah. So now I think Alex Grinch just hit his ceiling. And obviously this staff is just way above what the last staff could do. Not only are they more experienced, but we're seeing they're recruiting at a much higher level. Gets the excitement going. The players, even on the team right now, are getting excited about what's happening on campus with the team. So literally everyone will benefit from this year's change on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, I know I'm not the host by any means or anything like that, but I got a question. Where do we all stand on Marcus Major? Because I just don't see it, man. Like I know a lot of people are. I think the worst thing that ever going to happen to him was somebody saying that he's the closest thing to Adrian Peterson we've ever seen. But outside of the Florida game, which the five of us each could have rushed for 50 yards in that game, every single Sooner that had a carry, and this is what I get: every single Sooner that had a carry in that game had their longest carry of the season in that game. That's unimaginable. It's that first time it's ever happened in a bowl game. I'm positive. But he's been there since 2019. He was academically ineligible. He had, an injury, whatnot, but he hasn't, he's been, we all assume that Barnes is going to be at worst 2 on the depth chart, right? I mean, Eric Gray, they brought in Eric Gray last year to be number 2 on the depth chart. Like, we keep on seeing freshmen jump or transfers jump, everything like this. Like, I don't know. I know I don't know if it's a certain situation where people are just like, man, he just hasn't had the opportunities. Like, no, he's had plenty of opportunities. Like, but I don't know. I hope he proves me wrong and rushes for 1,000 yards this season, because that would be very good news for OU. But I would love to get y'all's opinions on where Marcus Major is by midseason in the running back depth chart, and defend your position.
I want to go first.
Brandon, you want to go ahead?
I mean, I was just going to say, I think we've had this exact conversation on our show many a times, and we're all very, very, very high, as Travis alluded to, on Javonte Barnes. Brum said on our show that he thinks Eric Gray is the one constant as far as the rotation goes in the running back room, just because of the threat he has out of the backfield receiving, and he's dynamic in that regard. But by mid-season, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he falls out of rotation altogether. Is because, I mean, I think Javonte Barnes is going to have a bigger season than some people. I mean, we all think you mentioned number 2 at worst, but I wouldn't be shocked if Javonte Barnes becomes the lead back by midway through the season. I'm very high on him. So by mid-season for Marcus Major, yeah, I can see him kind of falling out of the rotation. But I mean, like you said, I hope he proves us both wrong and does rush for 1,000.
All right. Before the next person answers, on our last live stream, we invited a listener of the show on, so he's about to join us. His name's Matthew Bingham. Let's get him on now. See, is he popping up? What's up, Matthew? How are you?
I'm good. I'm trying to figure this out.
Hey, man.
I'm trying to get earbuds and stuff in. I don't know what I'm doing, so just give me a second.
You're good. I'll mute you while you figure that out, but we're going to continue with this question. The question was, what do you think about Marcus Major and the impact he could have, or what his season is going to look like? All right. Brum or JP, whoever wants to answer.
JP, go ahead. You ready?
Yeah. I agree with Trav. Trav and I have talked about it off camera before. We talked about it, I think, actually on the show a couple of weeks ago. Marcus Major has been this folklore. Like, really, you could compare Marcus Major, if you want to be honest about it, to the Loch Ness Monster. Okay, because we've heard tale after tale after tale of what he can be, but we haven't seen it, whether it's injury or grade issues or whatever. And even what we saw, the flashes that we saw in the Florida game, while they were great, it wasn't like a game-changing back. It was like, he looked really good, but it wasn't. Again, he was supposed to be, AD light, and he ain't been close to that. So I hope he stays healthy. I hope he can give us something before he leaves the University of Oklahoma. He's a homegrown kid, But yeah, we'll have to see.
I'll start off with saying that it's now or never for him. I mean, this is his year, and I don't see Marcus Major being on the roster next fall one way or another. I see him either going to play in the NFL or I see him transferring, because I think he knows that this year he has to put it all together. Because when you look at this recruiting class, as far as the running backs go, Barnes and Sawchuk are behind him. And then you look at this most recent recruiting class of Caleb Hicks and I'm blanking. And Smothers. So you got two more guys there. And then DeMarco's already going to go after his 24 guys and 25 guys. So there's just not going to be enough room. I think Eric Gray, like Brandon said, I will stick by him. I think he's the constant throughout this whole season. I think he puts together his best season in a career season. He's primed for it. Marcus Major, I see him putting together a solid season because I think ultimately he hasn't been able to get out of his own way. The academic issues, he can control that. The injuries have been a little out of his control. I think with the new staff, he's going to have some good support and some good guidance. I think Major plays throughout this season. I think him and Tolly Walker are going to be kind of the bigger backs that are going to be kind of being brought in towards the end of the games to finish games. I think Walker can push for a decent amount of snaps, and I think that's someone that I'm going to go on the record saying I bet he's a scholarship player by the end of this season.
So I think some of the comments that came in were a good question. I know me, Brum, and Jose have talked about this on our show, but I'm curious to see.
Are you about to not let me and Matt answer the question?
Go ahead, my bad.
Oh my God, Bonnet. I'm just messing with you, bud. Matt, you can go ahead.
We're talking about Marcus Major. I think he will have a good year, but he's one of those guys. He's just going to be here or he's going to be gone, just because of all the guys behind him with Sawchuk and Barnes, and then you got Eric Gray that is still there, but I think he'll be gone after this year. I think Barnes is going to be the number one back. I just think Major is going to be boom or bust. That's kind of what I'm thinking on that.
Yeah, I think most of us are in agreement here. Major, honestly, I've never understood the hype behind him. I know he's had good games before, but I think if there's going to – what was that? I mean, he had a decent game at Florida. I know you said we could all rush for 50, but it's still a good game.
In a game where every single ball carrier set their career long, you have to throw out that outlier.
All right. You're fair. Then
Jose, his best year is 187 yards.
I was talking about
that was the year with the Florida game. That includes the Florida game. Doesn't it?
I mean, either way, I've never bought into that.
Doesn't that stat include the Florida game, though?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Which is probably most of the yards because he barely played that year.
Yeah, true. All right, so sorry, go ahead. I was just going to think what games he had that were
No, you're good. So, I mean, I genuinely think that he will I don't even know if he'll start the season off as a starter. I think most people expect him to, but I could see it seems like Eric Gray has gotten like the nod as being, a key contributor to the offense. I think Javonte Barnes, I know everyone says like it's just a spring game, but the fact that we saw him as he's literally a freshman come in, and he had a lot of snaps at the spring game. I think it's not the performance he had, but the amount of snaps he got to play, because we didn't see Caden Helms get that many snaps. We barely saw him on the field. Like, that mattered, the fact that he got to play so much. He might not be a starter this year, but that just shows how much this staff believes in what he could be. And then Tawi Walker had a really good game, and I mean, again, and I've said it every time we talk about Marcus Major on our show, availability is what keeps him from being good. He might be the most talented running back in the world, but the dude has had very unfortunate situations with injury, and then he couldn't keep his grades up last year. Like, that's half the battle of being a student athlete. And I mean, it stinks for them, but you got to go play school and then play football. It's not Jameis or who was it? Jameis or
Cardale Jones.
Cardale Jones.
Oh, Cardale
Jones. We didn't come here to school.
I still contend that Cardale Jones should have declared for the draft after the national title game, because he played in 3 games. He played in the Big Ten championship, he played in the first playoff game, and then he won the national championship. And he was lights out in all 3 of those things. And nobody had film on him, like anything. The only 3 games that NFL scouts could have looked at for film would have been the 3 biggest games of the season that he was trucking dudes. Like, it was insane. He looked like Cam out there. I would have declared. Somebody would have taken a flyer on me. Instead, he comes back, looks like crap, doesn't play, whatever, right? But there are 2 things about the running back room I think that are important. And with the implementation of Levy's style. Eric Gray was the number 3 ranked all-purpose back coming out of high school. Lincoln Riley forgot that you were allowed to throw the running backs the football. So Levy throws the running backs the ball. That's going to be extremely important. So that's going to get him on the field a ton, because he is our best pass-catching back. Get him in space, everything like that. So that will be big time. Now I'll flip the script, and I'll do the full heel turn from earlier. The only way I think that Marcus Major can really make a big impact this season is the fact that Levy gave 4 different people 100 carries or more last year. One of them was the quarterback. Dylan Gabriel's not going to have over 100 carries this year. So they ranked 11th in the country last year in rushing attempts. The top 3 were, as always, the service academies. So if you've got a guy that's rushing a ton, more than 110 teams in the country, and what he likes to do is he likes to throw the ball early, and then he wants to run the ball late. He wants to lean on people. That's where Tawi Walker obviously is going to have a lot of success. He's a bowling ball. He's a tough guy. You're going to throw him in the second half. And it's Marcus can get in then. But so I think this offense is better suited for Marcus to get involved because of just the sheer amount of carries that are going to be distributed. I think there are going to be 4 backs that have over 60 carries this year. That would eclipse any total in Marcus's career so far. So if he's top 4 in the depth chart, then I think he will get the carries.
Hey, go ahead.
Just this question goes to JP, Travis, and Matt Bingham, because we've talked about this on our show a bunch of times, and I've seen it in the comments here a couple of times. Gavin Sawchuk, do you guys see him having a role at all in 2022, or is that something that we're gonna have to wait on further down the road?
Go ahead, guys.
I think the room's too crowded. I mean, not that Sawchuk's not good, but he got here late in the summer. Just think you have Eric Gray, you have Barnes, you have Major, you have Tawi Walker. I think that's going to be too tough to crack to even. I mean, we may see him in one of the early blowouts for a second, but I don't think he's going to get that much time at all this year, and that's okay. Kind of let him develop.
I kind of think that if an injury happens, he'll get a lot of playing time, but I think he's going to get redshirted. I think he might even be the fastest. He might be the fastest player on the team from everything I'm hearing from Trav and Brandon Drum and Parker. He might be the fastest guy on the team. I think it's one of those things. He's way down in the depth chart, and he kind of came in late. I think. I'm pretty sure Sawchuk came in late, but I see him getting redshirted.
Yeah, speed could get him on the field, but other than that, I think it's a little. I could see him taking more of a Gray role if Gray has a big year, maybe goes to the league, anything like that. Like I could see him taking that role more of a pass catching back that you want to get in space to use that speed. Obviously, he was a state champion in the 60. Was just walking people in the 60. So, oh man, Indy's been up so late. Look at this. There you go. Welcome back, buddy. Oh, I thought he was asleep. I was like, oh man, he's been up since 6 a.m. But regardless, it's I think Sawchuk gets on the field next year. I think he gets bulked up a bit, learns the playbook. Getting here late obviously was a detractor, but we shook the tree and some Marcus Major loyalists fell out, so they're taking over the chat. So sorry about that, guys.
Yeah. And something I'll say, we're talking about all these running backs. I think something that can't be overlooked, while they're all talented, this offensive line is going to be much improved. They're going, obviously, the Schmitty effect on them is going to be evident. I think the first snap of the game in 5 weeks from now, less than 5 weeks, I think it is. I think this offensive line could be really good. Wanya Morris takes that next step. Rame comes back. He plays well. Chris Murray, Met Tower, Harrison. It could be a very formidable offensive line, and Coach B is going to have his guys ready to play, and they're going to be opening up a lot of running lanes, and it's going to be like what we're used to, where OU is going to be able to run over people and just play smash mouth football finally, not the whole fancy options and things like that. They can close out a football game when they need to in the fourth quarter.
Man. All right, I'm looking for questions here. Who's the punt returner this year?
I would love to see Billy Bowman back there personally. I mean, I am not a subscriber to the get your guys on the field and special teams, to get some reps, whatnot. Put your best players on special teams. Georgia had 5-star defenders, going and covering kicks and things like that. They had, you see CD Lamb back there returning, punts.
Yeah, but remember when Iowa State hit CD Lamb on a punt return?
Yeah, that's risky.
That's the reason I don't love it.
It's risky
having a star player like CD back there.
You look at Bama, you look at Ohio State, you look at Georgia. You look at all these teams that keep on winning more games than everybody else, and I think a little bit special teams, if you allow it to. It gets put on the back burner. It's again, put your backups out there. Not a big deal. Call fair catch, whatever. Like Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, they look for an advantage in every single aspect of the game. And special teams, you can have major tide turning plays. A kick return completely changes the game. A big punt return, flipping the field. Anything like that, if we're getting into defensive slugfest, you need your best players to go make your plays. And that's where I am. It's like, look, football's a risk. Injuries are part of the game. I totally get it, but people are just as likely to get injured, going across the middle or do anything like that. They're more protected in the game than ever before. So. Put your best guys out there, let them run, and make what's a neutral into an advantage in every aspect of the game. It's like Bill Belichick. He's always looking for it's a game of percentages, right? Give me a 1% edge here, a 3% edge here, or 2% edge here. That all adds up, and in a game of inches, ask OSU last year. 1 inch basically kept them maybe out of the playoff, kept them from winning a Big 12 championship. And that's how close these games come down to. So I will always be a proponent of putting your best on the field whenever you can.
I don't know who's going to return kicks, to be honest with you, but I am just ready for some quality special teams because I can go back and think of games. Obviously, the Bedlam game, OU lost. They lost for multiple reasons, but you can go and look at the special teams. The whole thought of, always fair catching a punt, not letting punts fly over your head, if it's within a certain distance. And it just was mind-boggling to me. I'm just ready for some quality special teams and some, I don't know, just because you can win and lose games, like you said, Trav.
I would love to see Bowman. Billy Bowman's a playmaker. In high school, he did everything. He was offense, defense, return specialist, everything like that. He's so dynamic with the ball in his hands. I don't necessarily want to always wait for him to get a pick or recover a fumble to see him with the ball in his hands. So would love to see him, Billy Bowman, playmaking in the return game. Plus, he's big enough to withstand those hits.
I'd like to see I know I said he's going to get redshirted, but that's just because I don't think he's going to be a punt returner. Gavin Sawchuk, because he's super fast. I like to see the fastest guys returning kicks and stuff like that. Like Ross, when we had him in the back, Alex Ross, I thought he was huge, and I thought he was just fast. And I'd like to see that again. But for me, I think Gavin Sawchuk with his speed. I'd like to see it, but I don't think that's going to happen.
JP, do you want to go?
Yeah. I'd be okay. I agree with Bowman. I'd be okay with Mims back there as well. I think he had done a great job in the past. Trying to think of anybody else I'd like to see back there specifically. Can't think of one off the top of my head. Probably Bowman and Mims. Again, we've seen what Mims can do, especially from the punt returning position. But would love to see what Bowman can do with the ball in his hands. Really wish we got to see more of that last season. But obviously last season was what it was. So,
yeah. So, Jose, what do you think? Do we do a few more questions and we kind of wrap this thing up, or what do you think?
Last question. So if you have one, go shoot.
Well, I was going to say from the chat. I don't have another one. I was thinking, can you find us another one? And because I think I'm pretty talked out. I mean, obviously July was crazy. August is just going to be as good. I mean, maybe one question I have is over under how many commits in the month of August for OU. I'm going to set it at 4.5.
Bro, we have 5 locks.
That doesn't mean they're all going to announce in August.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, one's going to announce. Yeah, they might not all announce in August.
You almost gave something away there, didn't you?
If we go long enough, maybe Trav will just tell us.
Maybe Trav will just start spilling all the deets.
We're an hour 6 here on 2 planes. Just firing questions at Travis now.
Yeah.
All right, so over under 4.5. I'll go with the over. I do think that even though we had, potentially not all the 5 locks announced this month, I think there's other guys. I genuinely don't think Anthony Evans is one of the locks because he wasn't there. So maybe he would be the guy that would put us at that 5.
Dude, this spam in this chat is ridiculous. We can't get rid of it.
We can't. I've tried, people. I know it's frustrating. I've tried so many times. I've blocked them. I've put them on timeout. I've done everything I can. They pinned themselves.
Oh, my gosh.
Did we get to see any General Booty this season in mop-up time?
Yeah.
For sure.
Is General Booty QB2?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
think so.
I agree.
Yeah. So my last plug of the night, we launched a membership. Check it out. It's $4.99 a month. It's good content. Subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 4,800. And check it out. So that's all I've got.
All right. Awesome. Well, Thank you, everyone, for watching. You guys set a record for Two Plane Sports. We got like nearly to 650 today, so that's awesome. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We will have our regularly scheduled video on Wednesday, so keep an eye out for that. We'll keep you updated with everything recruiting. Thank you, JP, Travis, for joining us for the full 2 hours. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. It was awesome having everyone. We'll see everyone next time.
And Parker,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
JP and
And
Trav
Parker.
show Wednesday, 9 p.m. live.
Yeah.
Soon.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
plug it.
I believe
JP and Travis.
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
we're
And everyone,
we
I
got
was going to
Brandon
say,
Drum, I think, joining us.
Yep. We'll have Brandon on the show Wednesday. So
yeah, go check out their show. I'll be watching, that's for sure. So subscribe
Yep.
to our channel,
sir.
subscribe to theirs, follow us all on Twitter.
Everything will be linked down in the description.
I put my handle right here.
And there's JP's. Y'all give them a
Yeah.
follow and watch their show. It's good stuff.
appreciate you all.
Appreciate it.